Hi, I'm James Barfield. This is your Urban Connection. This is a channel that is often imitated but never duplicated. Today is no different, and I have a very special guest that I want to introduce to my audience throughout the state of Kansas. And her name is Jeanna Repass. And Jeanna is running for the office of Secretary of State for the state of Kansas. Welcome to the show, Ms. Repass.
Thank you so much for having me, James. I am honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure, ma'am. Now, what I want you to do, Ms. Repass, is I want you to introduce yourself to my audience and then give us a little bit of your background, what you've been doing over the last 20, 30 years, and then we'll come up to date.
I'm happy to do that. Well, my name is Jeanna Repass. I am running for the Kansas Secretary of State. This is a position that has never been held by an African-American. There's only ever been one woman, and she only held the office for a short time in the 60s. As a matter of fact, the only time we've ever had a statewide politician representing the state of Kansas was in 1882. The state was founded in 1861, so we've got some work to do. I think we're a little behind and we're overdue. I am African-American, I am a woman, I am a mother and a wife. I will tell you my background is twofold. I've had a corporate background in both media and telecom. I ran a radio station, an urban radio station in Omaha, Nebraska. And for your listeners, yes, there are Black people in Omaha. We have a thriving urban community there. And I built the first ever urban hip hop station. Now, let me quantify that because I don't want to upset any of we had some free network stations, some free bandwidth stations, but ours was the first media sponsored corporate radio station. It is still going now. A lot of my fingerprints are still all over it. I'm very proud of that. And then I also did radio here in Kansas City, the Kansas City area. I currently live in Overland Park in South Johnson County with my husband. And I want to say 3 kids. My oldest son has moved out. Thank you. I adore him, but he is actually a sports broadcaster for the CBS station here in Kansas City. He played football at Kansas State and then got his degree and joined the television station here. And then my daughter is 26 years old. She's going to be going to KU Med. She's having her white coat ceremony in July. And then my youngest son is graduating this Sunday from Blue Valley Northwest High School. He's a state champion football player. It's the first time they ever won state in the school's history. And my son was the starting right tackle. Oh, good. I know, it was very exciting. He'll be going to University of Nebraska Lincoln in the fall. And then my husband runs a securities company here in, not financial security, like actual hardline security company here in Kansas City in North KC. And then outside of my time doing radio and media, I spent some time as a vice president for a telecom, but my real heart and passion was working for the community. So I have done tons of community outreach work. When I was 18, I started doing community outreach in the Logan Fontenelle housing projects in Omaha. A lot of people here don't know what housing projects are, which I think is twofold. One, that's a good thing. It means we're moving beyond it. But 2, it's like, you guys need to know where we came from. So I did that. And then I did some additional urban outreach through the Lutheran Church, working with my mom, who was a civil rights activist and then became a pastor in the Lutheran Church. I loved that time. I love our community deeply. We are underserved and underrepresented. We have made great strides, but I know firsthand how much more work we have to do. And then right before I decided to be a stay-at-home mom, which is what I've been doing the last 6 years, I worked for the United Methodist Church of the Resurrection as their director of local mission outreach. I'm not a Methodist, but I do love the Methodists. That is a church that boasts about 27,000 members. We did $1 million in grants on Christmas Eve. We did a $100,000 grant on Easter, and I ran a $250,000 outreach budget for that church. So I'm a both and corporate and community service oriented.
Super. You know, you mentioned the Methodist Church, and I just did a commentary here about 2 weeks ago about the separation of the United Methodist Church, which is now breaking into 2 factions. But anyhow, let me ask you this. You mentioned that you ran radio stations in Nebraska.
Yes.
And your son is going to the University of Nebraska. So is that where your roots are?
That is where my roots are. Both my mom and my dad are native to Omaha. Native Omahans are a big thing. And back in the day, they would ask each other, "Who's your family? What church do you go to?" They're that kind of Omahans.
Right. Okay.
Then my dad went into the military. He left a college scholarship to play football to go volunteer to go to Vietnam. My mom joined him in Germany where he was stationed. And then we moved around just a little bit when I was younger, but we landed in South Texas where my father became a state trooper. And we lived there till I was through my freshman year in high school. Unfortunately, my parents divorced then, but we all ended up migrating back to Nebraska. And so I finished high school there, went to college there, met my husband there, raised our kids there until about 16 years ago when we moved to the great state of Kansas. And
all
that's
right.
what we've been ever since.
Glad to have you. Now,
I'm glad to be here.
Okay. Let me ask you this. This is your first time running for public office, is that correct?
That is correct.
What led to your decision to run for this particular office?
I got to swing big for the fences.
Okay.
No, I actually do have a serious answer for that. Over the last 4+ years, 5 years, I've watched in horror to what has happened to our democratic process. I have watched people do everything they could to disenfranchise people of color, people in lower socioeconomic classes, trying to not only deny you the right to vote or make it harder for you to vote, now telling you that when you voted, somehow you were doing it illegally, there was fraud. And now they're trying to put things in place to say that if you can go through all of the jumps and hurdles that they put in front of you, cast your ballot, have it cast, we're going to put people in place to overturn the will of the people. And that was enough. And I was actually, I'll be honest with you, James, I was thinking about running for Congress because I thought I would be able to get in there and make some legislative changes, but we do have a sitting Congresswoman in my district. And so good Democrats don't try to primary each other. And I thought, okay, well, I will wait. I'm a patient woman. I'll learn about this. I will fight. And then we realized there was no one running for Secretary of State. And that is the office that oversees and protects our votes.
Right.
And not only is our incumbent a Republican, the person primarying him is being backed by former President Donald Trump, pushing the big lie that there was fraud. And I said, all right, well, I'm getting in.
Right. Well, we're glad to have you in, and I wish you good luck. Let me ask you this. What I want you to tell my audience, for those that may not be as aware as I am, what basically does the Secretary of State do?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. A lot of people have asked me that. So what's important about that is that it is the office that oversees and secures the elections in the state. We certify the elections. We make sure that at the county level, the county will then oversee the city and municipal elections, but all of that rolls up ultimately to the Secretary of State's office. And in any major election, including and especially the presidential elections, the Secretary of State certifies that the elections that happened in that state, all those votes that were cast were free, they were fair, they put their stamp on it, and that's what goes to the United States Congress. And that's how we elect our presidents. That's how we certify that our senators and our congresspeople and even our House, local state reps, Senate and House are certified. And that office really is responsible for protecting the vote. There's also a business element to what the Secretary of State does. Every state has a little different spin on what their secretaries of state do, but every single state, the number one duty is being the key voting and elections official.
Okay. And so basically you're in control of the number of outlets, the voting outlets, the locations. You're in charge of that. You're in charge of making sure that everything is running like it should. And one of the things here in Kansas is, as you just stated, we've not had any serious issues with voter fraud, unfair votes, none of that. But it still seems like the state legislature, at least some of them, still want to put in place these difficult, make it difficult for certain people to vote. And I don't understand where they're coming from. Can you help me out a little bit?
I will do my very best. What I've come to understand, James, is that there is a difference between election security and election suppression. And what's happening is that they are using this big lie to say that our elections were insecure, and they're using that to now try to suppress the vote. And when I say suppress the vote, it's people of color, It's marginalized people, it's shift workers, it's not their folks, for lack of a better term. And so what is happening is because Kansas has gone pretty much red. You know, we are a state that votes largely Republican. There was nothing wrong with that. But we did certify our elections, and now what they want to do is make sure that they keep control of our local and our state legislature. We have a super majority of Republicans in our state legislature.
Sure.
And which means that if our governor vetoes something, they can override it without even having to retake it to committee. It just goes. But for some reason, that's not enough, because there's a few Democrats. We do, where I live here in Johnson County, we have sent a Democrat back to the United States Congress twice. The last two presidential cycles, Johnson County voted for both President Biden and at the time candidate Clinton, and before that, Barack Obama. So there's a little pocket of good blue over here on this side of the state. And those state lines are trying to be redrawn to break up Johnson County. And so that's what they're doing. It really doesn't serve their purpose. They already have a supermajority. The state very much goes Republican. So this is really about, again, back to what I said, trying to make sure that people of color completely lose their voice in the democratic process. That's the only answer I can come up with.
Okay, that's fine. We know that there is such a thing that's called gerrymandering. And we've seen, you talk about Johnson County and Wyandotte County, and I think we've seen an effort to take parts of Wyandotte County and put it way out into western Kansas. Okay, I mean, which is absolutely nonsense. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that a judge has ruled that not appropriate. Am I correct?
Well, there was an injunction put in place a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court heard the case. The Kansas Supreme Court heard the case on Monday, heard arguments. Just today, breaking news, the Supreme Court struck down that injunction, said that the argument based on the merit of gerrymandering, trying to disenfranchise people of color and underrepresented protected groups, basically, that the argument didn't meet the standard. So unfortunately, just today, we found out that gerrymandering is going to go through. The Supreme Court upheld the original legislation. So unfortunately, those lines will hold.
Is there any process to appeal that decision to a higher court?
We can always appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States. I think we would have to, I hope the KDP is really, Kansas Democratic Party is interested in that fight. I haven't heard yet if they will. I just know that the Supreme Court's decision overrides the injunction. So they are allowed to go ahead with that gerrymandering as of right now.
Okay. So they're not even comfortable with having one Democrat in Congress, because I believe their intention is to try to remove her from.
That is correct.
I mean, this is something else. So let me ask you this now. You're kind of late in announcing your candidacy, are you? Aren't you?
Yeah, almost definitely. Well, there's a process. In Kansas, you have to do what's called an ethics filing and be able to name your treasurer and then show that you are able to raise funds and then do a launch. Ideally, you'd have about a good 6 months lead up. You do the ethics. I would have done the ethics filing back in the fall, start really raising money, and then the actual official date to final drop dead deadline to register yourself for the office is June 1st for statewide, June 10th. I believe they moved it back to June 10th for congressional seats and things like that. So I am a little bit late in the filing, but that being said, we still have 6 months to go. Thankfully, Democrats, again, I'm not being primary, they don't have an opponent. So as of right now, my name will be representing the Democratic Party on November 8th. And it gives me the entire summer to get out and about and motivate people to get out and vote. It's just so important.
Well, now, and I recognize that at this point, you don't have a Democratic opponent.
Right.
Are you now absolutely certain that no other Democrat will get in the race?
I don't think you're ever really certain of that. I will tell you the party would discourage that, but I don't say that in the way that I want to discourage people from running. My parents instilled in my brothers and I that our responsibility to this country is to get out and serve. So I was always going to do at some point serve, whether it was school board or locally or like I said, my aspirations were maybe to run for Congress. But as far as I understand, there is no one. I just was in our launch events yesterday. I was at the Capitol, and then we had an event back here in Johnson County. I was with the Democratic chair, the state Democratic chair. And at this point, we don't believe anybody else is going to be throwing their hat into the ring. If I'm late, they'd be really, really late.
Yeah, right. Well, of course, like you said, you're fortunate though, because you won't have a primary. So that gives you more time to get your name out, your platform. Let me ask you this. Do you have the support of the National Democratic Party?
Well, at this point, let me say this. Today, not yet, but we got some really great press yesterday. We are running for history, and we believe that we will get some attention. The part of that's going to depend on the Republican Party. Donald Trump has endorsed one of those candidates, and it's not our incumbent. Our incumbent Secretary of State is Scott Schwab. He's being primaried by a gentleman named Mike Brown, who is an absolute big lie theorist. He's pushing the election fraud, and Donald Trump has endorsed him. He has actually promised to come to the state of Kansas to do a rally for Mike Brown. And if Mike Brown somehow wins that primary, it's going to be a Donald Trump show. And we believe the National Democratic Party will come in to lean some support into my candidacy at that point. I'm hoping, if I'm honest, that because I am racing for history, I am a Black female in a state that has never had an African-American. It's only ever once had a woman in this role, that the National Democratic Party will come in and offer our support. And I think there's a good chance of that.
Okay, let's hope so.
Let's hope so.
So now, basically, how long have you actually been campaigning? Let's put it that way. How long have you actually been campaigning now?
About 24 hours.
Okay. So you're brand new.
Yeah. Well, we did our filing about 3 weeks ago. We chose to do an official launch and a filing yesterday. I have officially filled out the paperwork, which it's interesting because I'm running to be Secretary of State. I had to go to our current Secretary of State's office to file. So I was sitting right next door to Mr. Schwab's office when I'm saying, hey, I'm trying to replace you. But we chose that date because it was the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision anniversary. And we felt like that was one of those things Kansas could be, we do hang our hat on, and we appreciate Oliver Brown for being the leading voice that helped the country desegregate our schools, and then ultimately the country.
Okay, now I noticed that your campaign manager is a local guy from Wichita, Mr. Witt.
Yes.
Now he has an extensive political background. I'm sure you'll find that helpful, and you're going to need that help, especially in fundraising. And so that was going to be my next question to you. It's totally new, but do you have any financial, I won't say contributions, but anybody that pledged to support you financially?
Yes, and I'll say this: once we did our filing, our ethics filing 3 weeks ago, we were able to officially start doing some fundraising. So we were doing some kind of pocket fundraising in those last couple of weeks. And I would like to say that after we launched yesterday, our donations went up. We're trying to raise around $50,000 a month to run the campaign. So that's a lot of money. I spent the morning doing calling, asking basically friends and family to start out with to support the campaign. And then I'm doing speaking events. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you on the podcast. I'm hoping people will get excited about this. And we are doing pretty okay right now. We're raising, we need to raise about $2,000 to $4,000 a day in order to really run the campaign that we need. And we're so far on pace, but again, it's just been 24 live hours and a couple of pocket weeks.
Well, I mean, I know you're running for a statewide office,
Yes.
but I would say this: you're fortunate that the part of the state that you're running from is primarily a liberal area, Democratic area, and a lot of money in that area. So basically, that should be helpful to you in terms of your fundraising. You should be able to get some pretty good support. If not from the entire state, certainly from that area up there. That should be your, I'm sure, your best fundraising area right up here in Northeast Kansas.
Yes. Well, let me say this: I'm planning to get out and shake some pockets a little bit further west. I'm excited to get out into our Black and Brown communities, our Latino communities. I'm married to a guy who's got farming on both sides of his family. Both sides are farmers. And there are pockets of Democrats there. Now, the further out west you go, the smaller those pockets are.
Yeah, that's
But
right.
but we do need to get out and really motivate our African American community. If nothing else, I want to motivate them to make sure they're registered to vote, they are engaged in voting, and that they understand that both parties aren't the same. And I'm saying this, I'm sorry to get us off topic, but my hairstylist, when I told her, hey, I'm going to do this, she's like, oh, that's great. What are you running as? I said, well, I'm going to run as a Democrat. She goes, well, I don't know. Are the Democrats any better than the Republicans? And I understood what her sentiment was. We're all pretty soured on politics,
Right.
but there
Right.
is definitely a difference about the people who are trying to strip our rights, take us backwards to a time where we were domestic workers, where we've always been the shoulders upon which this country stood. Let's be very clear. But we have had a stronger voice in the last 40 years. And there are people who are trying to take us back 50, 60 years. And so it is really important to engage our community in this process.
Right. So let me ask this. Basically, what platform are you running on? I mean, what issues? I know the election issue is certainly at the top of your list, but what other issues are you running on?
Well, as the Secretary of State, really, I need to stay focused in the election realm, but the three specific things I'm doing is I want to restore confidence in the citizens of the state of Kansas, that their votes have not been stolen from them and that we don't have fraud. Number two, I want to do voter registration. There's the state of Kansas is 16% Latino. It is only 6% Black across the board. But we have a lot of people who get disenfranchised by our current laws, and we have got to get those voter rolls up. And then I want to see that people actually not only get registered to vote, but they actually go to the polls. I want to make sure that there's access for everyone. So really it's about restoring confidence, getting voter registration, and getting access to those voters. By the way, while we're talking about this, there's a current law in the books that was passed bipartisan support in the state legislature with huge margins, 38-1 in the Senate, 119-3 in the House. And it was saying that we are supposed to allow people to vote at the polling place that is most convenient to them. I tie this back to our segregation argument. Oliver Brown wanted his daughters to go to the school closest to their house, which at the time was an all-white school, right? Instead of having to go all the way across town to an all-Black school. That was the basis of his lawsuit. Well, we have a law in the books right now that says, Ms. Barfield, if you are running late from something, but it's 15 minutes till the polls close and there's a polling place 10 minutes away from you, you have the right to go there and vote. But our current Secretary of State has not only not enforced that law, he is making it really difficult for our counties to enforce that law, so that you might have to drive 20 minutes to your set polling place. And at that point, you may get there after the polls close. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of limiting access. So the very first thing I would do is make sure that the law that has already been passed is enforced so that we make it easier for people to vote.
Okay, now what's your position on voter ID?
Well, my position on voter ID is this, that it has to be expanded. I have always used an ID to vote. I voted in Nebraska and we've had voter ID laws there forever, but I do understand that we need to make sure it's not just a Kansas state driver's license or ID. I think that there are a lot of people who don't drive.
Sure.
And I think there are a lot of people who we make it very, very difficult for them to get a state issued ID. I think we have to expand what identification we accept.
Okay, and not only do a lot of people not drive, but also there are some of our elder people, more senior people, don't even have birth certificates. Okay, and so that makes it very difficult, if not impossible, for them without a driver's license and without a birth certificate to obtain what would be appropriate ID.
Right. I agree. That would be something I would take on almost immediately after coming into office. Because I think that there's an intentionality about making sure, because by the way, our elderly population votes at such a high rate.
Right.
And that's part of that suppression, is trying to keep those folks from voting.
Sure.
And so we're going to make sure that under my administration, if I become the Secretary of State, that we are going to find ways to have appropriate voter ID. And by a voter ID, like I'm not saying that we're going to make someone give a drop of blood, but I do think it's important for people to feel confident that if I say my name is Jeanna Repass and I'm a member of, I live in Kansas, I'm a resident of the state of Kansas, that I can show that that's who I am. So I don't have a problem with that, but I have a problem with making it so difficult that people then can't even prove that's who they are. Or that if my name is spelled similar to someone else's, they're kicking me off the voter roll. That's what Chris Kobach did when he was our Secretary of State two terms ago.
And he was overruled, I don't know how many times. So he was definitely on the wrong track and the wrong
Yes,
path.
yes. And we had to sue him lots.
Yes, yes. So let me ask this now. We talk about the Northeast and we talk about and we're South Central here, but do you have plans now to do, well, I won't say every, but the majority of the counties in the state of Kansas?
Absolutely, 100%. I cannot wait to get out. I love people. I love my fellow Kansans, and I am excited to get out and talk to people and find out. And really, honestly, you know, obviously the Secretary of State's office I don't fix the roads and things like that. But all of that basically comes down to us being able to vote for the people who represent us, who do handle those issues. And so I am excited to get out to South Central. I love that. South Central Kansas,
Right.
and everywhere else. Now, I may not get to every single county, but we're going to get to every single region for sure. And if someone invites me, I'm going to do my very best to get there.
Okay. Okay. Now, you were talking about raising $50,000 a month.
Yes.
So let's assume that you're successful at that. How do you intend to spend that money?
Well, campaigns are not inexpensive. You referenced my campaign manager. I have to pay him. As much as I'd love for him to be a volunteer, he is not.
Okay.
And there's some paid staff that we have, but the majority of that money that we raise is going to be going to things that help us get out the vote. At some point, we'll be doing paid media. That's both radio and television. We're going to, at some point, maybe further close after we get out primary season, look at doing mailers. Although, you know, my team's debating the effectiveness of mailers. We don't want to put something in someone's hand they're going to throw away.
Sure.
But making sure that we are as effective as possible is getting the word out. And unfortunately, until we get campaign finance reform and we have public financing of campaigns, it's really expensive. And the Republicans have a deep war chest. So I'm just honestly, because I am a little behind. I've never run before. I don't have a war chest built up. I'm trying to catch up.
Okay, and along those veins, you know, as we all know, money is the mother's milk of politics.
Yes,
but I have a saying that in politics, all money is not good money. So do you have a limitation on who you will accept money from?
100%, because my integrity can't be bought.
Okay.
And, you know, people need to, you know, as long as you're coming in good faith because you want to support me, you support voting rights, access to the ballot and registering people to vote, I'd be happy to take your money. But if you have a secret agenda, if I find out about it, I don't need that to be a part of my campaign. We can run an integrity campaign, and that's my plan. Now,
when will your website be up?
It's up now. It is up now, and people can go to it and contribute. And now that we're talking about money, it's my name, Jeanna Repass, and it's spelled, listen, my parents would have made my life easy if they spelled it G-I-N-A.
Yeah.
But I've got 6 letters in my name to spell Jeanna. So it's like Jean, J-E-A-N with a nut on the end, N-A. So J-E-A-N-N-A, Repass, R-E-P as in Paul, A-S-S, like Sam, JeannaRepass.com. It takes you to my website. If you click on it, my face will come up, and there's a place right there on the front that says donate now. And we have 2 different ways you can donate: online, and then there's information if people would rather mail a check to me. And there's also opportunities for people to help volunteer that are listed there.
Now, so I have to ask you this. Would you consider yourself running a grassroots campaign as opposed to, like, say, a business or a special interest? I mean, are you accepting donations of $20, $25, or you're looking for the 500 to 1,000, 2,500?
I'm going to give you the answer is E, all of the above.
Okay.
I am both and. I'm definitely grassroots. I'm going to be out there shaking hands, meeting people, talking to voters. But I'm also, you know, I got a max donation. Just so you know, the maximum donation in the state of Kansas is $2,000 per individual per cycle. So between now and August 2nd, someone could donate individually $2,000. And then from August 2nd to November 8th, they could donate an additional $2,000. So I'm absolutely looking for people who want to do that. But let me say today, I was like calling and talking to people. I had a young man who donated $10 to my campaign. Okay. And I was as thrilled to get that $10 as I was to get the $2,000. because
Sure.
it's all about reaching people and knowing that they believe in what I'm trying to do. So I'll take $5.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Well, listen, ma'am, I want you to do one thing for me before I let you go. One more time, give the audience your web address.
Thank you, Mr. Barfield, so much. It is my name, Jeanna Repass, spelled JEANNA, REP as in Paul, ASS, like Sam, JeannaRepass.com. Now, here's what I will tell you I've done. I was smart enough to buy some domain names. So even if you misspell Jeanna, it'll redirect you to the right website.
Okay. That's very good to hear. Very good.
Yes.
Smart thinking. Smart thinking.
Thinking ahead. Well,
ma'am,
I've had this name a long time. I know people misspell it.
Right, right. Well, let me just say to you, it's a pleasure having you here. It's a pleasure having you in the race. And I hope and wish you all the success in the world. And I hope that I can have you back here with another interview as the Secretary of State of Kansas.
I would absolutely love that. And let me say this before I sign off. Mr. Barfield, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being a voice to our urban community. I admire you, I appreciate you, and I'm here if you need an interview anytime, and I'm excited to get out to your area and meet you in person and meet the great people in the South Central part of our state.
I would love that. And when you're in the area, holler. Okay?
I will do that.
You know where to find me, and you'll think you have my phone number. So if you're in the area, just holler.
I sure will. Thank you, and thank you to your audience. And please get out and register to vote. It's the most important thing we have.
Yeah, we gotta have it. We gotta have it. I encourage everybody to vote. I can't tell you who to vote for. Well, I can, but vote. That's the most important thing. Just vote.
We're on the same page there. Well, thank you, sir. And good luck with everything you're doing. And I sure appreciate the time today.
It's my pleasure, ma'am. You have a very good evening.
You too, Mr. Barfield. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.